Greetings. It's good to be with you once again. I'd like to share out of Jeremiah again, chapter 3, beginning with verse 15 and 16. And I will give you pastors according to mine heart. God desires to give pastors. Now, in that day in the Old Testament, kings, priests, and scribes or prophets, kings, priests, and prophets were the ones that spoke to the people. And yet we know that God is a shepherd. He is our shepherd. But yet also he's our pastor. He leads us and guides us. And why did God have to say this verse in this at this particular time? Remember, Jeremiah was prophesying, and Judah, was getting ready to go into captivity to the Babylonian Nebuchadnezzar, King Nebuchadnezzar, because of their disobedience, their sin, their not being ashamed of their sin, and justifying their sin. Doesn't that sound like today? You can look at the news today and you see all these things about justifying sin. And also they're not ashamed of sin anymore. Look at the TV programs that are coming out now. I tell you, seeds of darkness have been planted in the last 8 years in a strong way, that the enemy opened up the doors to all kinds of filth and garbage. And yet we see today people are not ashamed of their sin. People talk about Fox News and look and talk about Bill O'Reilly and other people. They're probably guilty. I don't know. But nonetheless, look at the women that dress on these Fox News. They reveal themselves. They look seductive. And yet they want a man to act like not a man, like he has no feelings. He's a zombie. People are trying to change the gender today. We see the gay movement. It's being pushed more, the envelope being pushed more and more. And yet we wonder why these things are happening, because we're not ashamed of sin. We left God, just like Judah and just like Israel. We're going to go into captivity one day, I believe, because of our sin, because the church is compromising, and the church has woken up for a period of time when Trump was voted in, but now it looks like Trump is flip-flopping, and yet he's losing his base, and the Republicans don't want to pass a bill for change Obamacare. Look at all the fighting, the infighting. So you can't trust politics today. But yet there will come a time when God says he will bring pastors that are after his heart. David was after God's heart, even though he did a lot of sins. But yet God is going to bring pastors again. Look at Peter. He said to Peter after he sinned and denied Christ, he said to feed my lambs in John, also Matthew, but in John specifically chapter 21, he says to feed my lamb. And then he says, feed my sheep. Then Peter gets upset and he says, feed my sheep. And he says, Lord, you know my heart. See, we need pastors today that are after God's heart. And like Jeremiah, they're willing to even go through terrible things in order to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. Jeremiah said he was going to shut his mouth and not speak for the Lord anymore because of the things the persecution that he faced. But yet, what did he end up saying? He says, like, it's a burning in my soul, it's a burning in my bones. So we need a burning in our souls again, that we be willing to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ without compromise. But we see preachers today that are compromising the word of God. We see politicians compromising. They say they're for God, but they're not for God. Look at the Democratic platform. They turned away from God. I just even heard recently that their president or chairman spoke against God and spoke against Christianity. So we see even the polls today say that 57%, I saw also 53% of people in America want socialism. Can you believe that? Our dedication and our zeal for America, our patriotic zeal for America is low, very low, and especially it's among the young people. We allowed our young people to get away with everything. Look at the people that are getting away with people that are things that are of crime in politics. I mean, if they really went by the crime code, Clinton would be in jail, Obama would be in jail. It just came out that the Politico site found out more about the Iran deal, that it was so illegal, and even given illegal info to the Iran, our enemy, from the Obama administration, from Obama, and yet they're not in jail. These things are going to come out, but they're not going to end up in jail. It's sad to see our country that we fought for during Vietnam and World War I and World War II, Korea War, and the Gulf, and other wars that we had. Some that I slip in my mind, but there's other smaller wars that we had. I'm thinking one, but it's not coming to my mind because I don't want to slight any veteran. But yet look at a veteran today. He got killed. He came back from war. Someone was honking the horn at the McDonald's. Someone came up and punched him in his face. He got out of his car and then he shot him. Now, he didn't die in war, but he died here in America by someone's anger. We have so much anger in America today. But this verse says, let me come back to these pastors. Now, the only time we're really going to have pastors like this, some say, is during the millennial reign. But I don't believe that. I believe Apostle Paul had a heart after God. I believe that Peter, eventually, he had a heart after God. All the apostles, the Jewish apostles, and many others, the 70 that went out and preached the gospel, the people that are dying in Syria that are preaching the gospel, they have a heart after God's, that it says, according to my heart. They preach the gospel according to God's heart, which shall feed you with knowledge and understanding. You see, we need knowledge and understanding. Without knowledge, without understanding, we're not going to be able to grasp a hold of the truth. Look at Matthew chapter 3 or chapter 13. He gives a list of the sower, and those that are sown in good ground can bring forth good fruit, 30, 60, and 100. And the others, though, that are tares, we have tares in the church today. He says not to uproot them because they'll be uprooted when God uproots them in the last days, because it speaks about the end times, the end of the ages. That's Revelations chapter 19, when God also speaks in dealing with the wicked people. Also Revelations 20, when he speaks about at the great white throne judgment, the second resurrection. But we have people that are preaching after God's own heart today. Not only for the millennial reign, but for today. But we need to keep our hearts clean, and we need to be willing to stand in the gap and even give up our lives if necessary. Look at all the people that the news media don't want to talk about, the genocide that Christians. I just saw a site from Jay Sekulow that where people are being crucified again, upside down, and their heads were being beheaded, children being buried alive, women are going to be raped. So we see in the end times these things are going to happen. But we need to continue to preach the word of God, because colleges are turning their back on, have been turning their back on God, and teaching our children, giving them seeds that the devil comes and chokes the word out of their hearts and their minds, because they don't give them the truth. They give them, there's no absolutes today. So we need to be faithful to the word of God today. We need to stand up and be accounted for. It also says in Jeremiah 14:14, because if you look at Jeremiah continually here, you see that this is happening constantly. Then the Lord said unto me, the prophets prophesy lies in my name. I'm running out of time. But read those verses, Jeremiah The prophets are lying. Prophets are lying today. We need to be faithful.